right. How's everybody doing? I love it. I love it. It's that great time of the year. ICAST is underway. Things are fantastic. Gotta love it. So yeah, like John said, I'm gonna be talking about how to maximize LinkedIn, which is a very interesting social media platform because unlike all of the other social media platforms that are really social media, LinkedIn is specifically designed as a professional's social media. So the majority of the work that gets done on LinkedIn is between employers and employees. And so what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to give some background about LinkedIn, and then I'm going to show you some strategies for how to maximize using it in your professional lives. So first thing I want you to recognize is how many people are actually using LinkedIn. So these are the big social media stats. So with 2.89 billion at Facebook, and interestingly, because Threads just launched last week and they're already skyrocketed to 55 million registered users, we then see that LinkedIn fits in there somewhere, not quite at the top, but not in the middle to the bottom range, with about 930 million users currently registered at LinkedIn. The other interesting thing also about LinkedIn, because primarily when we're talking about employment and job seekers, is that LinkedIn is now used in over 200 countries. So part of what we're looking at also when it comes to international, to business work, we're looking at an international community here. Now, from our perspective, as we talk about LinkedIn, one of the things we're recognizing is why are you on LinkedIn? And for a lot of people, it's to find a new job. And one of the things we'll talk about today is sort of opening up the framework for how we think about where our job search is leading to us. And a lot of us don't necessarily think about an international position, yet with LinkedIn, you get a lot of opportunities in other countries that you weren't anticipating in your job search. So interesting numbers to see there, but I also want to be clear about LinkedIn's mission, to connect the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. Now, that phrase productive and successful is going to become very important as we work through this and we talk about LinkedIn, because part of what I'm going to try to show you is how to actually use it toward productivity and how to improve your own success with it. So, quick little background, as the slide shows, LinkedIn's now been around for 20 years, or a little over 20 years. It was launched in 2003. It is a Microsoft brand now. It was purchased in 2016. It is focused on employment. That's the big thing here. It is a fantastic site for professional networking. Again, that's because that's what it's there for. And it has some interesting features like allowing job seekers to post resumes and also for employees to post job ads. And we're going to talk about some strategies for using those as I move through this. So a lot of what LinkedIn does is it focuses on talent solutions, on marketing solutions, and premium subscriptions. And the reason for those three focuses is because those are the three things that Premium Access charges for. So just like any other social media, if you're paying for subscription service and for the higher level access, those are the three ways that LinkedIn is making its money, through talent solutions, marketing solutions, and premium subscriptions. They also sell advertising, obviously, as everybody does. They also offer recruitment services, so they are a headhunting organization in and of themselves, and they also have membership privileges. So it is unlike a lot of the social networks we work with, it is a more closed network. That means that only people who you connect with, who you have a direct relationship with on LinkedIn, ever get to see your stuff, and you only get to see those people's stuff that you're connected with. This is why when you're on LinkedIn, one of the first things that you start doing is click connections. And you'll notice immediately in LinkedIn that there is a box that identifies how many people are you connected to. Now, interestingly, that number shows 500 plus once you go over 500. So it is an interesting kind of way of keeping track of how many people you're connected to. Now, I will admit to you right now, this is my LinkedIn page, I will admit to you right now that I do not use LinkedIn a lot. And I'm going to show you what I use it for. And the reason I don't use it is, as John said, I have a job. I have a great job. I'm a professor at the University of Florida. Go Gators. I'm not looking for a new job. I'm also not hiring anybody because that's not my job. But as I'm going to show you, having the professional connections inside of LinkedIn also boosts what I do as the owner of Inventive Fishing and with my podcast, The Fishing Professor. And so using it not just to find jobs, but to make industry connection becomes very valuable, even if you're not job searching. And just out of interest, yesterday, or excuse me, July 9th, so I guess it's been 3 days now, there were a little over 18,000 jobs posted for things tied to the recreational fishing industry. Now, some of those are derivative, like selling insurance to boaters and those sorts of things, but because of the way they're tagged, they are tied to our industry. And to me, that's kind of impressive that on any given day, there are over 18,000 jobs that you're potentially tied to. It seems kind of a dynamic thing. So let's talk about how do you maximize using LinkedIn. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 10 fundamental ways of using LinkedIn, the sort of the basics. How do I do this? And then I'm going to give you 8 pro tips, okay? So I'm going to move through these, and like John said, afterwards, if you have questions, please ask. So let's start with the first of the 10 fundamentals. You have to create a dynamic profile, because the first thing anybody's going to see on your LinkedIn page is a description of who you are and what you do. Now, when I say a dynamic profile, part of what I'm talking about is not just having some basic, hi, I graduated from such and such a school, I want to do this, that sort of mundane narrative about your professional career. You want to start thinking about, how do I use the language in the profile to give clues to where my real expertise is. But the real trick there is that those are the words that are going to come up when people are looking for specific characteristics and employment traits when they're searching through LinkedIn. So part of what I recommend doing is identifying and creating a list of the attributes you most want to convey to potential employees or potential employers. Now, part of that also is starting to understand how LinkedIn is going to search for those terms in its search engines and how you're going to optimize using that language in order to draw in more viewers. So part of that is, as you're putting your profile together, and I'll talk about this in a couple of different ways today, but looking at how other people, particularly very successful people who work in the industry you're trying to work in, recreational fishing, how they're describing their activities so that you're aligning your profile descriptions with the ones that are already working. Now, this includes, and here's a list of a handful of things that you want to include in your profile, whether you are job searching or whether you're looking to hire someone. Identify what your vision is. Here's what I want to accomplish. Identify what your mission within that vision is. Here's how I plan on doing that. Here are my values. And I don't mean by that your political values, your personal values, but your professional values. Because ask anybody who's interviewing someone, if they ask what are your values? Well, I'm hardworking, I like people, all those cliched kind of values, that's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for are those attributes that you're really going to be able to talk about. That I am very intrigued and interested by professional development. I want to see how I'm going to grow. All of those things get tied into how you're talking about your work values. Again, and positioning. Where do I fit? What are my qualifications? Where do I fit in your industry? Or where am I looking for somebody to fit in that industry? Now, a tagline is important because it's sort of a summary. It's sort of an overview that says, I am a professional working in the recreational fishing industry with expertise in product development and sales. Okay, now you've got a tagline and identifies specifically what you're doing, what you want to continue doing. And then, of course, if you are a company, you want to be able to identify what products and services are you offering through your company if I'm trying to hire you. Okay, here's the big thing about LinkedIn, and this is basic, bare bones LinkedIn, is you want to connect with other professionals in the field. You want to contact them, you want to reach out to them, and in a minute I'm going to show you a trick for reaching and contacting the people who are not listed as contactable. because there are always end-around tricks in LinkedIn to bypass the blocks that they put up. And I'm going to show you a couple of those. So being able to connect is going to be the main focus then with LinkedIn. Who can I connect? And there's some benefits here too, because even if you're not job searching, even if you're not hiring, being able to make those professional connections long-term help you develop your reputation and your ethos in the industry, being able to tie into what other people are doing. So the third most important part of this is engage. Don't be an observer on LinkedIn. Make sure that you're talking to the people. If there's somebody in the industry that you look up to, or somebody in the industry whose work you really like, message them, talk to them, get to know them. Again, LinkedIn is all about making those connections, and you're not going to make those connections if you're not reaching out to others that you want to connect with. I tell a lot of my students when I'm teaching them about job search is that you are not going to get a job by standing in the hall waiting for somebody to walk by and tap you on the shoulder and say, do you need a job? You have got to make the engagement. You've got to be reaching out over and over again. And again, I'll show you in a minute, I promise, a trick for that. The other thing is, part of what you're doing with LinkedIn in developing your reputation is making sure your name is out there, that people see you and recognize you. And one of the neat features about LinkedIn is the ability to provide recommendations for other people, or more importantly, to endorse what they're saying on LinkedIn. Endorsements are pretty interesting, but you want to be, here's the real caution with endorsements on LinkedIn. You don't want to just brown nose for the sake of putting your name on somebody else's page. Endorsements are taken very seriously on LinkedIn. You want to be able to identify, hey, I read your article on this, I thought this, I am endorsing. And the more endorsements that you engage, the more people are going to come back and say, hey, who is this person that was looking at my stuff? Now they're working back and forth. So it's sort of a reciprocal process, but those endorsements become very important. But what you also don't want is the reputation, right? You're on Twitter or you're on Instagram, like, heart, retweet, you're just clicking over and over again. How many people sit on Instagram and just go heart, 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 for every single thing? You do that on Instagram and it's going to flag you as somebody who's just hitting the endorsement for the sake of hitting the endorsement. The likes don't work the same in an endorsement on LinkedIn. Join groups. On LinkedIn, there are disciplinary, industry-based groups. Join them. Listen to the conversations, participate in the conversations. That's how you start to make the connections. If you've taglined yourself as somebody working in the recreational fishing industry, but are not member of any of the recreational fishing or recreational fishing adjacent groups, they're not going to find you. You want to find your way in by joining those groups. Those are also better for tracking when job ads are posted, because a lot of the job ads will be posted in groups rather than just randomly. This is one of the things that I talk to all of my students about, is it doesn't matter what you do or what you want to do, start to become an expert. And what I mean by that is that you're paying attention to what the trends are, the conversations are, and you're establishing your voice in those conversations. So for instance, with a lot of my students, I regularly recommend, hey, if you are interested in pursuing a career in fill in the blank, start reading where people in that field talk about that field. And then, by way of social media, by way of a blog, whatever it is, start writing about those conversations. Start making comments about those conversations. Be a participant that identifies you as somebody who knows that field, who knows that discipline. And that, I always talk about, be an expert. That doesn't mean you're going to, write the best-selling book on recreational fishing or whatever it happens to be, but by being someone who's recognized as someone who can talk about the industry, that becomes very valuable in how LinkedIn makes connections. All right, so number 7, and I mentioned this in terms of the international deployment of LinkedIn. LinkedIn gives you a great opportunity to start thinking about other opportunities that you would have never considered. Because you start joining groups and because you, like those 18,000 recreational fishing jobs that I just alluded to a moment ago, you may have a very narrow view of what you can do in this industry. LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to say, oh, there are all these other things that I would have never thought of as a job. You've got to think about how much support and adjacent kind of employment opportunities exist in an industry as large as ours. And it provides those opportunities to say, I'm going to look for other things. I would have never in a million years thought about boaters insurance as tied to my interest in designing lures, but there are connections in the industry there, and it's an opportunity to work and build reputation in the industry as well. LinkedIn is another one of those great places to boost your reputation, and this is something you should be doing all the time. Now, one of the things that I have to make clear about any social media, and I will talk about it in some of the other sessions we'll have here, is that if you are simply putting something on LinkedIn, you put a profile page, you identify what jobs you want, all those kinds of, and then you leave it to simply be organic engagement, hoping people are going to stumble upon you, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to constantly be boosting and promoting. Your name has to be moving and circulating. Some of the people that I follow on LinkedIn, there's not a day that goes by when I'm not seeing a post about something in the industry tied to their company, tied to what the recreational fishing industry is. And I'm not going to talk about it here because I'm doing a session tomorrow afternoon on generative AI, but one of the really interesting kinds of ways you can do this boosting is to take longer form text, things that have been written, say, about the new release of fill in the blank, whatever company's new flipping rod, and take all that and use Gen AI to take long form and distill it down into summary, and then to be able to post and say, hey, I saw that company X just released this. This is a fantastic way to think about how we're designing flipping rods. Hey, what does everybody else think about this? Comments. And so you're using content that's out there to generate shorter content to engage and to create those kinds of conversations. And that all ties to boosting your profile, making sure you're visible. And unlike a lot of other social media, this is a place to boost your professional ethos. This is not the place to be posting eye candy fish pictures just so that everybody can see, ooh, look at this 8-pound bass that I caught in this amazing environment. That is not what LinkedIn does very well. And in fact, I've seen instances where people were just posting random, Instagram kind of photos on LinkedIn and immediately getting responses. This is not the platform for this, and it's a good way to damage your ethos as well. So you really want to spend time thinking about how your posts are going to develop your professional ethos, being able to talk intelligently, endorse the right things, and sort of develop that ethos. And again, like I said, you've got to be present. This is not a place where you just drop off your resume and hope that a week from now somebody's going to give you a phone call. You need to be engaged, you need to be present. LinkedIn is one of those social media. This is also why I showed you my profile, and because I'm not looking for a job and not getting ready to hire anybody, I find it very difficult, because I don't need to be on there every day. But people who are actually looking for improving their professional reputations, people who are looking for jobs, this is a platform you have to engage regularly, okay? All right, so those are the fundamentals. Everybody down with the fundamentals? Makes sense? All right, let's talk about some pro tips. Quick review. Do my David Letterman top 10 countdown real quick. Create dynamic profiles, content and comment, contact and comment, get in touch with people, engage, provide recommendations and endorsements, join the groups, produce dynamic and engaging content, be an expert, seek out new opportunities, boost your profile, develop professional ethos, and be present, okay? So let's talk about some pro tips. First of all, whatever industry you're in, look for the thought leaders. Look for the people who everybody else is following because they're putting out important content that people are responding to. So a thought leader, by definition, is somebody who's supposed to be thinking of what comes next inside of an industry. And by following them, what it does is it puts you, if you're reading their content, it puts you a step ahead of everybody else. These are the people who are doing the innovative work. These are the people who are rethinking what comes next. I want to know what that is so that I'm thinking about, and if I'm looking for a job, I can say interesting things like, hey, did you see that piece the fishing professor wrote about new flipping rods? I think that's an interesting way to think about, now it makes it part of your being part of the conversation. So follow the thought leaders, follow the people who are big in the conversation, whatever the conversation is that you're interested in. Now, I talked about during the fundamentals about making contact. One of the interesting things about LinkedIn is it's very easy for someone to simply block on their profile, I don't want people messaging me, right? Because particularly you get somebody who's got 1 million followers, they don't want 1 million comments on everything that they post coming back to them. However, like I said, LinkedIn has some interesting end arounds. So let's say there's somebody that I want to engage with and they have contact block on there and I can't message them directly. What I can do is I can join a group that they are a member of. Join that group. Then on that group's page, there is a little link up in the right-hand side that says Show All. That Show All will provide a list of everybody in that group. If you now click on that person's name, you can now message them without them being able to block it like they can on the front page, because now you're messaging as a group member having a conversation within the group. So there's always an end around for finding a way to get in touch with somebody, and that's one of the methods that I use, and I find it very, very helpful. I'm one of those people that I'm always looking for what's the end around here. So for instance, on my podcast, if I want somebody who is uncontactable, let's say for instance, randomly, let's say I wanted Liam Neeson to come on my show to talk about fishing. He's a hardcore fisherman, right? You're not going to be able to just contact Liam Neeson. But if you know how to use IMDb Pro and find their agent, find their agent's page, now you can start finding ways to actually get to a celebrity, right? So LinkedIn provides, whether intentionally or not, several end arounds here. Going back to the notion of groups, on the LinkedIn homepage, you can do a very simple search for fields, and then you can filter down to the groups within those fields. So if you type in fishing, you'll get a list of the groups that are registered under fishing. Now you can start joining those groups and start making contact that way. All right, just like everything else, when you're designing your profile, when you're making posts, anything you're posting, you want to think about that SEO, about that search engine optimization, because ultimately with any of these digital platforms, unless somebody happens to randomly stumble upon you, you want your name coming up in the search. And your name's only going to come up in the search if the content of your information is tied directly to terms that others in the area are using. So for instance, if I just put in fishing, that's going to be a massive list, right, as a key term. But the more I narrow those key terms down, the more likely then my profile is going to come up in a LinkedIn search. So you want to think about those key terms, those key words that are going to optimize your search when people are looking for you. Okay, so I love the @mention feature of LinkedIn. And it's sort of similar to Twitter's approach. So if you're involved in a conversation and you really want to get the attention of somebody, @mention them. Because it'll then flag them and say, you were mentioned in a post by Tatiana. Right? And if Tatiana mentions me in a post, what am I going to do as an employer? I'm going to now look and see, who the hell is Tatiana and why is she talking about me? Stop stalking me, right? But no, an employer is going to want to now look at all of your information and see, wow, there is a connection here. This is somebody I need to look out for. So that @mention is a way of waving to somebody and saying, hey, pay attention to me. Put your LinkedIn in your email signature line, because if you send me an email, let's say for instance at the end of the day, you decide, hey, I'm going to send Sid an email and tell him, well, those presentations throughout ICAST were fantastic. That's great, I'm going to write you back and say thank you. But if I see a link to your LinkedIn profile, what am I going to do? I'm going to click on it and find out who this person is. And, oh yeah, that was the person who sat there and took a ton of notes, and oh, that's the person who fell asleep in the back. Now I'm going to want to start to learn more about you. So put your LinkedIn in your email so that people are going to your profile, because your email doesn't have a profile. Again, post regularly, but I also recommend sharing dynamic content. When somebody else has posted something that's really intriguing and interesting, share it. Because if I'm getting it from you, part of what I'm mentally doing is acknowledging this person is paying attention to things that I'm interested in. This person is paying attention to the things that I need somebody in my business paying attention to. So share that content. Use hashtags when you're in a conversation. Find out what the hashtags are that tie to that conversation. Recommendation with LinkedIn, never more than 5. Try to get 3 in there. Hashtag flipping rods, hashtag jerkbait, hashtag boaters insurance, whatever it happens to be. That will then alert people who are not involved directly in the conversation that there's something going on with that conversation. If you're looking for a job and you're using LinkedIn, let the recruiters know that you're interested. And here's how you do that. On any company page that you're interested in, if they've got a job ad, if you click the About, where their profile comes up about the company, and you scroll down to the bottom, most of them will include an I'm interested button. And what it's signaling is, I'm interested in this job that you have. And that then immediately pings them, and they now have your name in front of them as someone who's interested. And what are they going to do when they get that notification that you've identified that you're interested in the company and the job? They're going to immediately click your profile and see who is this person and are they connected to what I'm doing. So being able, so this is another one of those end arounds. Click the I'm interested to put your name in front of them. And then my bonus tip. Create a value proposition. Now, what I mean by that is on LinkedIn, the purpose of LinkedIn is employment. Don't go onto LinkedIn and start trying to socialize with people the way you would on Facebook or Twitter or Insta or whatever it happens to be. In other words, don't simply say, hey, I saw that hat you were wearing, you look great in that hat. Okay, no, not on LinkedIn. What you instead want to do is introduce yourself and provide a value proposition, which is a very simple statement that says why a customer, wow, that did not spell right, a customer, or there's a space there, a customer or a potential employee should pay attention to what you're offering. In other words, you're introducing yourself formally in a job context. Offer a value proposition. Here is why I am valuable, and here is what I can do for you. That goes over in LinkedIn very well, simply saying, hi, I'm Sid. I like to fish. You like to fish. We should fish. That kind of socialization is not going to get the attention you want in LinkedIn, okay? So that's my bonus pro tip there. Now, if you really want me to extend that bonus pro tip, anybody who is working as an employee of any other job should be putting value propositions and professional development statements together, whether asked or not, and giving them to your employer so that your employer knows you're thinking about what your position is in that company and what you want to do to improve in that company. It's all self-promotion. So again, follow through the thought leaders, message directly, use your SEO optimizations, mention people, add the LinkedIn signatures to your email, post regularly, use the hashtags, and let recruiters know you are interested, and then of course the value proposition. So those are my hints for optimizing your use of LinkedIn in the professional setting. Now, we're going to have a Q&A in a second, and I will do my best to lie to you in terms of answers. But I want you all to be aware that I am always open to continued conversations beyond the Lunch and Learn sessions. I am available both today and tomorrow from 3 to 4 in the ASA Pavilion if anybody wants to continue the conversations. This afternoon, I'll be talking about generating content creation. Tomorrow, I will be talking about how to maximize your social media in terms of turning out revenue. And then tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock, the next big thing, generative artificial intelligence and the recreational fishing industry. And I'm very excited about all those panels. So I will stop now, and John has a microphone, and if you have questions, and thank you all so very much. Hope you have a great ICAST. Thanks for coming first, right as the show starts. So thanks.